Hey, everybody. This is your edition of People of Substance by LemonSkies. I'm so excited to introduce you to Kathy Kempff. Kathy is in Austin or outside of Austin?
In Austin.
In Austin proper. So she's an hour time difference from me. Kathy started her career and continued her career in nonprofit technology, supporting a lot of organizations. So we'll get into that topic. She was at Convio. I don't know, what number employee were you at Convio? Because you were there when they first started.
Early on, there's probably about maybe 20 people when I started,
Okay.
and we launched our first customer and first online donation form. So way back in the day.
Yes. And then went on to Charity Dynamics and a few other things in between that I will let her speak about. So Kathy, say hello. And
thanks, Olga, for having me, of course. And it's always great to share coffee with someone, even though we can't always be in person, even with distance. No, I think you covered it. I think, overall, my entire career has been dedicated to serving the nonprofit sector on the for-profit technology side, as you mentioned. And to me, that was always something that was really important and certainly a pillar in terms of what I wanted to stick to. I wanted to make sure that I was always focused on making an impact, a cause that I could believe in, and making sure that you are leaving a tiny legacy, no matter how small of an impact it is, and something that you can really be proud of. So I'm excited to continue in this space.
So the first donation form, I actually do remember conversations. What if we send out an email and ask people to donate online? So those were the days. Were you just sitting around and saying, what if we created a form?
I was definitely very junior in my career, so I was probably not having a seat at the table at the time. But it was definitely very leading edge, right? Everything had been, traditional direct mail. You're getting solicitations with, your mailing address labels, that type of thing. And so it definitely was very innovative at the time. And, you'd have organizations that you talk to and say, hey, what about XYZ? And they're like, no one's going to really do that. And, Amazon was, just starting to pick up. And so then there was still hesitation of even using your credit card online.
Right.
I think the turning point, quite frankly, and I don't know if it was 2001, maybe 2002, was when we had that big tsunami. And suddenly it was like this rush of online donations. It's like, oh, this really is a thing. And I think it started opening up everyone's eyes that this really is an industry that's going to change.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about women in technology and nonprofit technology specifically, but I'm not sure it's really that different from technology sector in general. That we're closing the gap, but that's a very relative thing. When we say closing the gap, we're making some gains about women in technology space, but it's still very incremental. I think it was like it was between 20 and 30% somewhere in that range, which is pretty minimal. Why do you think that is?
There's certainly a lot of variables there, but I think for the most part, it's certainly just been a lot more traditionally a male-dominated industry, and it's first hard to get women to choose this career path. One, and at an early stage, because you do have to, really dedicate years and years of your education towards it, and it can be intimidating, quite frankly. Especially when you're all surrounded by, the opposite gender. And I think sometimes there's a very different philosophy in terms of how we handle things. There's a lot more testosterone in the room. And for a lot of women, that can be, I think, a little scary. I consider myself a fairly strong female. It was still hard for me in many times where, the C-suite is going to be typically, male, white dominated. I think it really has to start both bottoms up and top down, right? I don't think there's a simple solution. I do think there needs to be a greater awareness at the top that this is super important. We're actually going to get much stronger results once we add more diversification, because you are single-mindedly just looking at it in a certain way, and you're not thinking about the other view. And then I also think we as women need to be more courageous and willing to fight the battle and put our name in the ring and really make sure that we have those seats at the table. So I think it's really a two-pronged approach.
It's interesting about women in nonprofit technology specifically. When you walk into a fundraising department, it tends to be so heavy, so female dominant. So hopefully, we might be leading the charge in technology space. I've been dying to bring up the subject of your passion project, and Moja Tu. Is it Moja Tu? Am I mispronouncing it? Have I been?
Moja Tu.
There you go. There's the mug.
There you go.
So it's an organization you started providing scholarships for schooling to orphan children in Kenya. Only Kenya or outside of Kenya as well?
Today we're just in Kenya.
In Kenya. So I wanted to ask you to talk about the story. Like, how does one start a thing a world away?
So I was kind of going through a tough phase work-wise. Things were very stressful at the time, and my sister-in-law, in fact, was, I think we should go on this like once in a lifetime trip to Kenya through our Rotary. We had done a bunch of fundraising to build a water well.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I can't do it. I'm too busy. And, it was like that moment where I was like, I got to step away. And so I did. And I went with, a group of Rotarians. And it really hit me that and we were building this water well at this orphanage, that these children had literally nothing, running around with one shoe, broken sweat, like a ripped sweater, broken pants, but they were the happiest children I had ever seen. And I was like, what is wrong with me? Why am I so unhappy? Like, why is it like I have the title, I'm making, a good salary, I have a great relationship, I have a nice family life. Like, why am I unhappy? And it really started getting me thinking about what's the meaning of happiness and how do you measure it, right? And so I I think it's like subconsciously in the back of my mind, I was thinking about it, but it didn't quite like all the like dots really connect. But I got back. I just told my boss that I was resigning, and I literally had not even thought about it. Like, just it happened in the moment. I was like, I think I'm done, and I hadn't told my husband, so I texted him. I'm like, I quit my job, and he's like, champagne. And so I took some time off, and I was like, I really want to help these kids. I don't think it's going to take a lot, and actually reached out to several organizations to say, hey, would you partner with me if I brought you X number of donors, right? And of course, I know a lot of people make promises and don't always fulfill them. And so I had a hard time getting someone to partner with me.
Yeah.
And so I said, what the heck? I'm going to do this myself. And so Moja Tu was born in January 2013. So it's been 9 years.
Mhm.
And Moja Tu means just one in Swahili. And so the idea was, if we can just find one person to make a commitment to help one child, we can actually help eradicate the cycle of poverty. And it doesn't mean we have to have this giant operation where we're, looking to sponsor, thousands and thousands of kids. It's just about making your small difference in the world, just one, right? And so that's how we started. And interestingly enough, within, probably like 3 to 6 months, we already had 30 kids sponsored. And we have about 185 kids sponsored today. And a lot of it has just been, word of mouth, friends, family of, board members, et cetera, where they call and they're like, hey, you didn't tell me that you're doing this. I want to help a kid. And so it's been incredibly rewarding. It's a direct one-to-one relationship. And in Kenya specifically, part of the issue is secondary school or high school is not freely available by for family members. And so the government might pay a small subsidy, but it's still a huge amount for someone who really is not making a decent living. And so getting that education is just so critical to be able to get them to be able to get a job, to be able to be marketable. And we didn't really initially have the vision of what do we do after high school, but we've had a lot of wonderful kids who've had really great success in high school. And so we actually have about 40 students in university today. And I have 2 students who finished university several years ago, and we hired them on, and they're our program managers now in Kenya. So it's incredibly rewarding. I don't have any kids of my own. And so this is something that me and my husband have been able to really dive in on and really feel like all of them are our children. And we're able to really dedicate, our time every year. We go try and visit them. Well, of course, not the last 2 years.
Yes.
We're heading over there in April. to just make sure that we're still staying true to our word and the impact that we're trying to make, in these kids' lives. And so it's definitely a very high touch, personalized experience. We're not looking to be, a giant conglomerate, but it's about trying to leave a legacy, as however small it might be.
So I had two thoughts, and one question, one thought. Like one day of these 40 kids who are in universities right now, like, can you imagine if one of them becomes a world renowned something? Like, how amazing. And
Yeah, it is truly, the most fulfilling part is seeing them grow and seeing them, really take advantage of these opportunities. You're not going to get everyone there, and that's just the fact of life. Like, we all have, people that we know that have kids that won't always take opportunities, and that's okay. But those that are successful and really eager to make that difference in their lives, it's so awesome to see. Like one of our program managers, her name is Esther. And when I met her, she was, 16, 17 years old, super meek, and, barely would even look at you in the eye. And she's now our controller. She's a CPA. She has her master's degree. And she's like chasing everyone down. Like, you don't have a receipt, you're not getting reimbursed. And she's being like, making sure that everything is like super, well controlled, and putting, guidelines in places, and telling, sending people memos about what their new process is. I couldn't be prouder, just to see how we've able to change just that one life, and however success looks like, it doesn't necessarily have to be this big career, this big job. Whatever the career path that they choose, they could certainly be in their right super successful.
so how long from like the kernel of the idea to standing this up and first sponsorship, how long did it take you?
The first nugget of I'm going to do this and I'm not going to be able to do this through a partner organization was probably in December 2012. And surprisingly, by February, we already had our 501c3 paperwork approved by the IRS. And we already had students sponsored in March. So it was really an incredibly fast turnaround, about 3 months. And so it moved really fast. But I think it was also like we had a lot of friends and family who were just really interested in helping and being part of something that they knew the impact of their donations, and that they knew exactly how it was going to be spent.
But that's incredible. That's 2.5 months basically from start to finish to actually get it off the ground.
I learned, I had to like go back to my software development roots and had to like build our website and learn WordPress. So, definitely a lot of learning for myself as well.
So, we keep reading and hearing about, it was first the Great Resignation, now it's the Great Sabbatical. But I kind of wonder, like the Great Sabbatical, I love the idea of it, but I feel like, well, what do you have to show for it at the end of the journey, right? Like getting some sleep is great, but something like that is completely doable, getting a project off the ground, and then it becomes a self-sustaining thing.
Yeah. Yeah. For all intents and purposes, I've kind of gone through that myself most recently. I left my position at Charity Dynamics last fall. So technically part of the Great Resignation. And I kind of went through this journey myself in terms of, is it a sabbatical? What is this really? Right. But for me, it was about kind of finding myself again.
Yeah.
And, I think a lot of times we get carried away with, I have to do this, I should do this. But I really had to kind of recoach myself and, I could do it, but it's a choice.
Yes.
Right. And, self-reflection of what is it that I want in life? Where do I better set boundaries? How do I become more disciplined in terms of what's important in my life? And how do I want to, make adjustments in terms of how I lead myself and my decisions moving forward? So I know there's so many people, interestingly enough, going through this, but I think the impact of the pandemic has also been us reevaluating what's important in our lives and kind of taking a time out and a pause to figure out how do I better stack rank this so that ultimately I can lead a happier and healthier life.
Well, this is a good note to end on. And Kempff, I'm just so grateful for your time. I've always admired you, and I find you so inspiring. Just your passion and your level-headedness of, focusing on what the right things are. Every time I have a conversation with you, I walk away just recharged. And so thank you for that. So thank you for joining us. This was People of Substance with Kempff. She's truly an amazing, inspiring person, and I will make sure to add the website of Moja Tu into the link so you can access it and read the stories for yourself. So thank you guys. Happy Friday.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.